Good evening. I'm Dave Lees from the Angling Trust. I'm here tonight with Damien and Linney from the Environment Agency, and over the next few slides hopefully we'll give you a picture of what happens when you report illegal fishing.
Good evening, thanks Dave. Yeah, I'm Damien Linney from the Environment Agency. I'm part of the Fisheries Operations team from Cumbria and Lancashire.
As I mentioned, I'm Dave Lees from the Angling Trust. I've been working for them for nearly 7 years now. How time flies when you're busy. I'm a retired police officer, 30 years in the Met and GMP. A keen angler, and I kind of combine my passion for angling with my knowledge of enforcement. And Damien and myself work quite regularly together. And yeah, top lad, Damien, thanks for that. So who do I report what to? That's the starting question really, because we need to kind of get that that message across. So for the EA purposes.
Yeah, so for the Environment Agency, we are the statutory lead agency on all fisheries enforcement, which obviously includes salmon as your migratory species and migratory sea trout, and all freshwater fish, eel and smelt fisheries. We have the same powers as a constable under the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act 1975 for enforcing all fisheries legislation and compliance for rod licensing. However, whilst CEA can deal with the sort of criminal offence side of it, our main focus is the rod licence compliance and the enforcement of the sort of national and regional bylaws along with the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act. We have approximately 80 warranted officers, which are fully warranted Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act, what we call HIFE officers, which is High Impact Fisheries Enforcement, and we cover all of England between those 80 officers across I think there's roughly about 14 regions that we work through. The Environment Agency is not quite the same as the police, as we're not a blue light response, although we do cover sort of 24/7.
I think it's important to emphasise that, Damien, isn't it? Because some people do think that you are a blue light resource. You're clearly not. You've not got the staffing levels to do that or the structure to do that. But do you want to just explain the duty officer system and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we run like a standby and call out system. So if a member of the public or an angling club or a fishery ring an incident into us, it gets picked up at our regional centre at Sheffield, like a call centre, and somebody will take that call and they will log all the details, which will be a mixture of results from like the geographical location, specific to the area that you're in, if there's any particular road name or postcode. So if you know exactly where you are, like the better the description of the location is great. Even things down from if you're on a river banking, if the incident's taking place on the left or right bank. So we always work off looking downstream to your left bank, obviously to your right, the right bank. I say always looking downstream with that. So if you can illustrate that, and then basically when that's rung in, all the details are taken. What's happening? What's escalating in front of you? Whether there's 3 or 4 people involved. What sort of equipment they're using? You know, are they taking fish? Is it suspected fishing without licenses? Have they bagged fish up? So a good, clear, accurate description of what's taking place in front of you. You know, trying not to miss any of those variables out. That is then put onto basically a spreadsheet of all the information that's been collated, and then it goes onto our national incident recording system, and then that is then put through to the relevant officer of that catchment area. So they have set maps of the fisheries operations catchment areas, and then it gets directed to the relevant officer. If it's out of hours, then we have the standby system whereby it would get picked up by an officer that's on standby for that particular region, which is like a duty officer. and then that will then filter down into the relevant team, and then the fisheries officer will pick that up.
Brilliant. Can you touch on the grading system, just because that causes some confusion?
Yeah,
sometimes.
so we have a grading system, which is, it's what we call like a kick system, which is basically a grading of the severity of the case, from grade 1 to grade 4. A grade 1 incident usually would be a severe fish kill, more than 100 dead coarse fish, or 10 or more salmonids. And then there's also the pollution aspect of it that will go through to the relevant environmental department for environment management, which is like what we used to call the old pollution officers. For the fisheries side of it, if it's 3 or 4 people, that would go through as a category 2 incident. If there's 2 or less, that would be a category 3 incident. So those gradings for those particular incidents give us a clearer picture of what's taking place and the potential severity of that incident, which then allows us to be able to direct hopefully enough staff, which is getting more and more difficult these days because of the big decline in officers that we've had over recent years. But it basically gives us a clear description of what's taking place in front of us, and hopefully given the availability of the officers to be able to attend that incident.
The only thing I would add to that, if you don't mind, Damien, is reporting it to the EA, even if it gets logged as a grade 4 and you don't get a response because of lack of staffing, that helps to build the picture of where the hotspot locations are. So it's important that we report on every occasion.
So yeah, just to chip in again with that, Dave, the information that's collated with that is obviously what we'd call intelligence. That's all then put into an intelligence system that we use called Memex. So that brings together all the intelligence, and if there's 2 or 3 reports of an incident that we've not been able to get staff out to attend due to geographics and officer numbers, the severity of that incident, depending on the grading of it, then gives us a clear picture on the intelligence system to be able to put together different intel reports from different systems and from different informants that have rung it in, all of which gives us a clearer picture of the incident taking place in that area. So it would categorise it as an incident that needs more attendance to it if we've had, say, 2 or 3 separate reports of it. So it's illustrating that there's a bigger problem, if you will, going on in that area, rather than just one report, which is like a single strand intelligence report.
Excuse me. So you've got your various laws there that pertain to your role, Damien. You want?
Yeah. So, like I said before, the main legislation we work with is the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act 1975. So this is basically all to do with the licensing system for nets and rod and line, prohibited methods and instruments for fishing. That's our sort of bread and butter piece of legislation, the big piece of legislation that we work with. On top of that, there's also the Salmon Act 1986, which covers one of the main pieces, which is section 32 of handling salmon and other freshwater fishery in suspicious circumstances. So an example of that would be if somebody had a salmon in the boot of the car, or they had it on the bank and they caught it and they couldn't sort of show what means they've caught of it, or if it was in a restaurant, say, and it was a full fish, they would have to provide receipt of where that fish has been, the sort of provenance of it, where they've got that fish from. The other ones we use, which is more centering around coarse fish and stocking fish, is what's now called the KIFRA regs, which is the Keeping and Introduction of Fish Regulations 2015. This also includes native and non-native fish species, and your site permits for consents for stocking. And then we also have the National and Regional Fisheries Bylaws, which is all to do with your closed seasons for different fish species, baiting restrictions, hook sizes and gapes on the hooks, and different methodologies for fishing. and it also specifies named waters. So ones, for example, particularly will be some of the freshwater lakes in the Lake District in Cumbria, like Windermere, Thirlmere, Bassenthwaite, those sort of waters, where they're actually specified for the bylaws that are specific to those water courses. There's also the eel regulations, which include anything to do with the screens and on the outflows and any barriers and passes for eel regulations. This also includes our requirement as an agency to govern any outflows and sort of tidal flaps on sluices to make those passable for eels and migrating elvers, which are the small glass baby eels. So we any works that we do, we always include migratable flaps on those barriers in order for those fish species to be able to migrate upstream. And probably one of the last ones we have is the Crayfish Order 96, I think it is. This is to do with all the trapping of crayfish and licences, which there's very few licences that would consent for this. There's specific requirements for fishery management and survey purposes. It's not something that we would license in order for people just to put a trap in order for human consumption. It's got to be specific fishery management survey purposes, and you would have to put forward the specific reasonings for that in order for us to license one of those. That pretty much covers, I think, most of the legislation that I can think off the top of my head.
This next slide really just emphasises the 24-hour number for the 0800 80 70 60. I have it on the fast dial on my phone. I think most anglers do. It's on the back of your rod licence anyway. These are some of the responses that you'll potentially get.
So yeah, some of the slides here, Dave, we've got just a few slides. We've got some fight nets in the bottom corner here. These are again, like we were saying about licensing instruments and traps. Fight nets generally they will be used for fishery management purposes, for potentially thinning fish stocks out. They would have to have otter guards on them. They're illegal to use without otter guards, and that is a prosecutable offence if you were using a fight net either without licence or without an otter guard. There's also different sort of array of traps, generally sort of perch and small like live baiting type traps. Again, these are a licensable instrument, and again, it's a prosecutable offence under the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act if you were caught using these without the correct licensing for them. We've also got another one here. I think this was something you came across, was it, Dave, in the bottom right corner?
It was down on the River Dee, and it's actually a hand line. Chap was using it. He legged it off into the bushes when we arrived, but he was using it, ledgering, just maggots. He was eventually located and reported for the offences by one of your colleagues, Damien. But that just shows you really an overview of what you do, really.
Yeah, some of the different things we come across. There's other things that are more on the sort of salmon and sea trout side of it, which should include sort of snares and other fixed engines, and sort of monofilament gill nets, trammel nets that are used for sort of netting salmon and sea trout on rivers, or even monofilament gill nets on large coarse fishes. Some of the flashes, for example, in Wigan, we've had instances of that over the years in the Great Manchester team, all of which are instruments that you can't license, that would expect to be reported with with good accurate evidence of what it is that you're seeing on the 0800 80 70 60 number.
Brilliant. So possible actions.
So yeah, for a rod licence offence, anything that we come across with that would be a recordable offence, whereby we issue an offence report form, your details are taken, we have access to all voters checks, police national computer, Got a few various ways, obviously good links to the police in order to, to ascertain what your details are. It's actually an offence to not give your details to an officer because we're deemed as constables under the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act. So if you don't give your details, it's actually a arrestable offence under SAFA and under Police and Criminal Evidence Act Section 24 in order to carry out prompt investigation. So there has been instances recently where anglers have actually been arrested, even some that have actually have licences that don't want to give the details out because they're a little bit anti-police, anti sort of enforcement agencies. And it has led to arrest with that, unfortunately. But that's how it goes. It's the nature of the job, really.
Yeah, indeed. That next photograph just highlights a joint patrol with the police, the EA. I think that was on the River Dee with the local council river patrol and voluntary bailiff service members as well. Once hotspot as are identified, try and work together to target the problem and get the message out there on social media to reduce that offending rate, to increase the fear of detection, which works every time.
So we're touching on the rod licence offence again. All the rod licence offences are a 6-month summary offence, so basically that means we've got 6 months in order to get it reported and get it into court. Cases are heard at Magistrates Court to start off with it being a summary offence. These can potentially go to Crown Court if it's appealed further down the line once it's been to Magistrates Court. Generally the fines, obviously you get the opportunity to put a guilty or not guilty plea in, and the fine incorporates a victim surcharge which is set by the bench, dependent on your means and circumstances at the time, depending on your working history and your earnings. There's also a part of the fine incorporates the legal costs as well with that we claim back for our legal time to do with ourselves as the fisheries officers and part of our legal team at Enforcement once in Warrington.
We regularly do joint patrols on the key hotspot areas. That picture in the middle is on the Ribble, on the free stretch down near the M6 with local anglers. Damien's there with his handcuffs and VBS members. Quite often the police will join us on them. I don't think they could on that occasion, but we incorporate things like litter picks while we're doing that as well. And there's a joint police EA patrol with yourself, Damien. I'm not sure what water that is.
This was on a match fishery not so long back actually. Mescal Lakes, which has been a day ticket open access venue for a number of years, and Andy that owns it has recently sort of, partly because of COVID and some of the issues that he's had on there, he's actually changed it to like a bit more of a private venue whereby they actually have a membership on there, and it's really turned the corner with it. The sort of clientele that they get on there are fantastic. They're all members. It's eased the strain of running a fishery for Andy, and we were really surprised at how it had changed when we were on there for the last bank holiday weekend. This was with the Merseyside police team, some of the officers and the sergeant there. Myself and one of my colleagues, Darren, with a guy that was fishing, one of the match anglers. Very pleased to see us and wanted a picture with us. But yeah, that's part of the rural task force that's being set up in Merseyside at the moment.
So moving on to the police, fishing without permission and the theft of fish from enclosed waters are both theft act offences for which the police have responsibility. So if someone's fishing your water and they're not a member, that comes under the police. There is a good chance they won't have an EA licence as well, and then it becomes a joint approach. So my advice is 999 if the crime is live and if they've refused to leave, or there's been threats made to you or you feel threatened. It is a police matter, that. 101 in all of the cases for reporting of historic offences. All police forces now have an online 101 system where you can effectively email them. You just go onto their website, GMP or whatever police force it is, and they'll guide you through it. And that can be really good if you've got a photograph or you've got something that you you want to get across to them. It is a good system. Quite often, as we've said, these offences will overlap areas of responsibility between the police and the EA, and they will work together to produce a file of evidence for the courts. The courts wouldn't run two separate files anyway, it would be inefficient. So police and EA officers regularly work together, don't you, Damien?
Yeah, we work together basically to put the case file together. Obviously, we support the Theft Act cases with our sort of extra knowledge with the fisheries background. But yeah, generally the theft case would be taken by the police, and the sort of rod licensing offence and other sort of legal instruments is taken by the Environment Agency. But the two often come hand in hand, like Dave said. If you're dealing with a Schedule 1 or a Section 1 theft offence or theft of fishing rights, there's often cases where there's a rod licence offence with that. So generally in this circumstance, the police would take a theft and rod licence offence as like a sort of dual case, if you will. But they'd be the leading agency on anything that includes the theft side of it.
I think traditionally a lot of people haven't understood that the police are responsible for the Theft Act aspect of poaching, and I think, you know, Damien, myself and lots of other people around the country have worked hard to try and get that message across and to do kind of education and joint working. So this, we'll talk you through this. This is at a fishery up in Appley Bridge in Wigan called Fir Tree Fishery.
Yeah, Fir Tree Fishing. Fir Tree Fishery, it's actually part of a CIC learning scheme owned by a gentleman called Martin, who works really, he's a fantastic bloke. He's set all this up off his own back. It's actually, he has part of the fishery. The fishery is a sort of joint family business, and Martin's worked alongside the agency. He's had some funding for setting up one of the first to this quality as well of like a learning school and full disabled access venue, and he actually provides this. We've got one coming up actually towards the end of July this year. He provides the full facility of his learning school stroke college and all the various accommodation there and the fishery in order to sort of run the joint fisheries, police and angling trust training work that we do.
Yeah, I started doing this job 7 years ago, and we were working together training police, weren't we? And we were doing it by means of PowerPoint sometimes. The police are just like the public. There's a very small percentage of them are actually anglers. When we do a straw poll, you might get a couple of hands if you look at a class of 30, 35.
Less than 5% most of the time.
Yeah, it is. So what we actually do, the first session is with a level 2 angling coach, and we give them a whip on the water and get them catching fish, and you know, they're getting paid while they do it. It's during a training session. It's only half an hour, but it's crucial because the angling trust coaches don't just get them to catch fish. They explain the terminal tackle, the methodology. If they catch a fish, they'll explain how much that fish would cost to replace were it stolen or poached. They will explain the business model of the commercial fishery. They'll explain the business model of clubs and other waters, river waters, riparian owners, etc., how the model works and how important it is to keep a control on poaching. So we start off with the first half-hour session, which goes down a bomb. We've had some converts from these who've taken up fishing, but it kind of spikes their interest, and it's far better than a PowerPoint presentation on a subject that you don't really understand. This has been rolled out, excuse me, across the country now. Most police forces are signing up to this. It's been a huge success really, and we started it off up in Wigan in the northwest.
Yeah, it's pretty much originated from Lancashire. The early days of doing this probably 12-13 years ago when we started it in Cumbria and Lancashire, and obviously since the Angling Trust have got on board, it's really grown. It's been, like Dave says, it's sort of migrated throughout the rest of England with other police forces. So
you've got an officer there with barbel, I think.
Yeah, small barbel.
Small barbel. Absolutely chuffed to bits. I don't know if he's one of the converts, but that was the first 30-minute session. We then went on to others. Do you want to talk us through those different stations?
The top left there, Dave, we've got one of my colleagues, Darren Wilson. He does all the consenting licences and everything for the kipper eggs. and Darren's just going through some. That's actually one of our vehicles with the tank on the back that we use for transporting fish from Calverton Fish Farm for when we're doing part of the restocking schemes on the rivers. And Darren's going through the sort of how it works under the Kiffer regs with restocking fish, the tank system, and we've got a small trap there that was seized off. I think it was a job off the Rochdale Canal potentially.
I think so, yeah.
So Darren's just picking up. So each officer has a sort of different remit to sort of talk about on the day. So Darren was doing that part to do with fish stocking and traps. The top one on the right, I think this was my section on sort of snigging, snaring, snatching, and the use of nets and prohibited instruments. On the bottom right is Richard Bamford, I think.
Yeah, it is Richard.
Richard was covering everything to do with predation and that side of it, and sort of, I would imagine he probably touched on the funding streams that are available under the FIT grant for otter fencing. Possibly some invasive species side on there as well. And then on the left, we actually did that was part of the mock scenario, I think, was it, Dave?
It was a vehicle stop in the middle of the night, sus vehicle near a fishery with a large carp in the boot. What do you do? Officers won't have come across that before. You know, they've got a duty care too. If it's a large carp, it's worth a lot of money, but they stepped out to fences and they need the support of the EA. So it was just talking through that. I think we did 9 workstations on the day.
Yeah. So this was back in February 2021, I think it was.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Nice cold day up in Appley Bridge. But yeah, 9 workstations, so you can see there just on the right is myself again and Darren. That's a long length of hazel with a crook at the top with a fixed snare. That was actually seized off two youngish lads, probably 20, 21-year-olds over in the Duddon Valley. They were prosecuted. I think it was £1,200 conditional discharge they got for it. For protected salmon. That was probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe now.
The Duddon Valley's in the Lake District, it's in the Western.
Yeah,
Lake
West
District.
Cumbria.
Yeah. Great success. As I say, it's been rolled out across the country now, which is. I think what it does, as much as anything, it builds links. So you build links with the Rural Crime Task Force from Lancs,
the different force
with ourselves. It just works really, and there's been a lot of good results on the back of that training, I would suggest.
It's built a lot of relationships to the point that, you know, we're working with the police on a weekly basis almost now with different sort of task forces spreading throughout Lancashire. We've got, I mean, at the moment we've got a regional task force in Lancashire that has 20 officers spread across, I think, 4 or 5 regions. So you've got like one up at Lancaster, Morecambe, and on the sort of Fylde area around there. There's another one over in Ormskirk, which is like the south area, covering part of sort of Skemersdale, Ormskirk into Preston. And then we've got another one in the Ribble Valley, and the last one is in sort of top of East Lancs, Rossendale way. So they cover, you know, the whole sort of county of Lancashire, all basically on rural and wildlife crime.
They are dedicated officers dedicated to that. It's not an addition to the normal role. And you've got, in the northwest, you've got Cheshire who are similar. Quite a few of your forces now are looking at or have rural crime teams, rural task forces, which really, you know, angling sits under them really, poaching. So it's been a big success, and long may it continue really.
So yeah, just a few more slides there. This is like we just mentioned about different task force. We've got part of the Ribble Valley team, 3 out of the 4 or 5 officers on the left there. That was out on the Ribble on an area sort of near Mellings Wood on the opposite side. We've got an old unit from Lancaster that we did some joint work with the Angling Trust, voluntary bailiff scheme, and I think it was a Pike Anglers Club as well actually back then. That's the one in the middle.
Yeah, it was Pike, yeah.
And that was the one on the right again was in Mellings, responding to an incident near an area called Gilligan's. I'm trying to think which it was. That I don't know if it was an out of season one actually.
No, do get them on the Ribble quite a bit, don't we? So these are available from myself or from any of the regional enforcement support managers. There's 6 of us covering the whole of the country. Our details are on the Angling Trust website, anglingtrust.net. Just enlarge it a little bit for you, and it's a flow chart just to show you who's responsible for what. As we've said, quite often they will overlap, but these are available. Just a nice size to put in your pocket. Very handy for club bailiffs, just to give them a reference to what's what. I'm not going to read through it because it would take me a little while, really. So finally, we're on to case 1 and our background, which is one of your jobs, this, Damien, isn't it?
Yeah, this was back in, when was it, April, towards the end of April 2022. This was over in an area called Tarleton, which is sort of just a few miles outside Southport on the Leeds-Liverpool Canal. Not far from Tarleton Nick, actually, as it happens. So basically, the two gentlemen here, the one at the front, Adrian Booger, he was reported by a number of people actually. It came through social media, also came direct to me on my works phone, and it's part of Southport Anglers that actually started reporting it, and some of their club bailiffs, because originally the 2 chaps were found using this cast net on the Crossons system, which is actually owned by the Environment Agency, the Crossons main sluice and the 3 Pills, which is a bit nearer to Southport, and it was reported to, like I say, through the various means, and eventually it got to myself. So I think it was the 19th of April we actually stopped him, but the week before we'd had all this intelligence build up from social media and different groups, and I contacted my nearest rural task force, which is the South team under the Sergeant Carr, and I work with this team quite a lot, and we basically put a small operation together to try and locate these people. We had the vehicle registration, so straight away we can PNC that and run it through the national computer and DVLA in order to get the address details. So we actually turned up at the address several days later after this original incident took place and looked for the vehicle. The vehicle wasn't there. Well, there was other vehicles that we ran, the police ran checks on for insurance, etc. on there. So we'd found where they lived, and then basically went around the local area seeing if there was any sights and sightings of this vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's important to emphasise there, the 0800 number was used. Social media and club WhatsApp groups were used so that head bailiffs, club bailiffs in the area were all aware. VBS members became aware through that. You got direct calls to you as well, several of them, didn't you?
Yeah.
And as you say, you shared it with Lancs Police. This is a lift off Facebook that I think it was Southport Anglers put on, wasn't it?
It was. I think it was one of the bailiffs for Southport Anglers. He reported it that night and put it on their. They have like their own private group Facebook page as part of Southport Anglers.
So it just emphasises the appropriate use of social media. I mean, unfortunately, when you put some stuff like this on, occasionally you get racist comments on social media. We don't want that, but it's a great way of highlighting the stuff in the area to get all those eyes and ears on it, so that Damien and the Rural Task Force can then do the job.
At the time of getting this, I had been out a few times on my own and with my colleague Darren, and unfortunately, we hadn't located these lads, and it was a number of reports, like we were saying before, about what we call multi-string intelligence from different sources. So, not only had we had the social media side of it, I'd also had direct calls on the phone, and then I'd shared this information with the police. So we'd set up a small operation to basically, see if we can locate these guys and see if they were using these nets, and obviously corroborate the intelligence that we'd receive from the various sources. So, yeah, we've got this. This is the results basically of it. We actually caught the 2 chaps on the 19th. It was there was a lot of luck involved in this, to tell the truth, because we'd only been on duty. We'd been to where the vehicle was registered at the registers keepers up in Southport, and within an hour of coming on shift, we'd done a couple of. I think the lads had done a couple of vehicle stops the police had on that day, and as we're going back past Tarleton Nick, heading back down towards Croston area, I'd actually seen the Passat estate on the bridge, on Bankhouse Bridge near Tarleton. So we'd spun the vehicle round, and anyway, basically gone up the canal, split up into different pairs with the police, myself and the 3 officers, and we ended up locating these lads coming off the canal a short time later, and they actually had this drop net, cast net on them, and a cool bag with a few small fish in. All the equipment was seized. The police actually arrested the 2 individuals because on searching the vehicle and his person, they had 3 different sort of bladed knives on them. So they got arrested and they were seized. So as a result of the great intelligence that we got, basically Adrian Booger appeared at Cheshire Magistrates within the 6-month time, and he received a total fine of £389 for fishing without licence and using an unauthorised instrument. So it was a good result, this, with the, like I say, working together with the police, and it shows and illustrates that good quality intelligence that we received from various members of the public and through the social media side, it's all come together, and it's a perfect example of working together and people protecting their own fishing and reporting it to us.
Yeah, it was definitely a good job, really good job. Cast nets, throwing nets, do you just want to explain these? Because I know from what I've had through intelligence-wise from VBS members that have passed through to the EA, they are quite prevalent, particularly in the summer months on the canals and the likes.
Yeah, it's something we didn't used to see years back. It was always more sort of rod and line instruments, but a lot of quite a few of the Eastern European guys now, they have started using these, and it's definitely been noted more the last 3 or 4 years. But it is more so on the canals with small shoal fish, whereby they're actually a net that's sort of designed to use in sort of more marine environments and in harbours and that, where they can throw it over small, silverfish and mullet, that sort of thing. But they work really well actually on the canals, which is a shame, because it's just another instrument that they have in their sort of toolbox, in order for these people to use. But yeah, this was basically an exact replica of the net that I seized off him. Yeah. It's thrown out using sort of centrifugal force, and the lead weights go round in a circle, and then it has like a bit like a cod end on it, like you use on a trawler net, so you can actually pull the string on it, and it pulls all the weights in, so that you have a cod end which traps the fish in the bottom. But yeah, the pictures here illustrate just how to use them. There's probably quite a knack to throwing them, I would imagine, but you can see here with the illustrations up on screen just how useful they could be. It's they're literally in the air for a split second, and then they're over a shoal of fish, so they can be really, really useful for that type of. It's obviously not a licensable instrument, and this is something that if you were found in possession using this like these chaps were, again, it is a prosecutable offence under the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act.
I did a quick search earlier on just to have a look what these, where they're available from and how much they are, and if you just do a quick Google search, you can find them at £6 up to £100 depending on the quality of them. I remember seeing a guy in Australia a few years ago using one of these in a marine environment, and he obviously was very skilled at it. He was catching quite a few fish doing it. So it can be an effective method, and I've had lots of reports on the canal networks in the northwest, particularly in summer, of these being used. So like you say, it's on the rise, isn't it?
Yeah, just one to keep your eyes on for any people that are working in the field and or bailiffing, volunteering. Just if you are seeing people using these, or even just carrying these, even if they're not actually in use, please do report it, because they can be quite devastating if they're in the right hands.
So we're on to case 2 now. I'll give you the background on this one. This has been provided by Nevin Hunter, who does my job down in the southwest. So in June 2020, a club bailiff and VBS member challenged a chap called Jamie Lee. He was a game angler on the River Exe, close to Exeter city centre. It was quickly established that there was no club membership, and he was asked to leave, which he did after some verbal aggression. The club bailiff, like myself, originates from Manchester, and I think he was told to Foxtrot Oscar back to Manchester. But he left the water. There was no aggression, just a few verbals. This report really just emphasises the need to report.
The persistence of it as well, really.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So over the next few weeks, Lee was seen poaching on the river again, and it was reported to both the police and the EA on 2 separate occasions. But unfortunately, there were no resources available to respond on those occasions. Although those reports were, as was emphasised before, they were logged on the NERS system and they were logged on the police system. So there was a record of those reports. On the 3rd occasion, police were able to respond. So it's the same chap, fishing, similar location, slightly different clothing, but the police were able to respond, and this fine officer attended. He got a bit gobby with her apparently. She reported him for offences, and she seized his quite expensive tackle. So that was a great result. The actual court result, well, the police and EA officers worked together. They were Nevin Hunter put the police officer in touch with the local Environment Agency officer, and they worked together in producing a prosecution file. So they would take what we would call Section 9 statements from the key witness, the bailiffs from the club, and they put a prosecution file together on this. And on the 27th of January 21, he was convicted at Exeter Magistrates Court for 3 offences of no rod licence and 3 offences of fishing without permission, and he received fines totalling £429. But in addition, his rods and reels were forfeited under Schedule 4, Part 2 of the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Act. I think you'll agree, quite a good result, that.
Yeah, it just gives that extra emphasis, the fact that, like the police often with this, they will like we do seize tackle and other instruments, but the police, particularly if they're dealing with a rod licence case, they don't tend to stand in the mess, and they will seize that gear, and you won't be getting it back, and over a course of time, basically that tackle is generally put back into the system for like angling coaching and some of the youth events that we do. So it is used for sort of the educational purposes, and some of the young lads that come into fishing do get a good use out of the tackle that we seize.
Well, that's great, isn't it? And it sends out a strong message, I think. Plus, it stops him from reoffending unless he puts his hand in his pocket and goes and buys some more equipment. So it's most convenient, isn't it, for a persistent poacher who could have walked away on the first occasion, but he chose not to. He chose to be a persistent poacher. Fortunately, the club membership, the bailiffs, were persistent in reporting him, and the police there got together, and a great result.
Yeah.
It just highlights the need for persistence in reporting. This is a good one. Do you want to talk us through this one?
Yeah, so I think this was last sort of spring into summer, just when the salmon was starting to get into the bottom end of the Ribble, sort of through the sort of top end of the tidal stretch. Some might say there was no real result out of this, but there is different ways of looking at it. It's a perfect example of sort of preventing disruption work, and sort of local anglers on the Ribble, particularly, like I'm sure in other areas, the people that fish on the Ribble are very, very protective over their fishing, particularly on what is known as the free stretch, which is basically from the estuary sort of limit up through towards Rockhole's Brow, which is sort of tickle trout area, just on the right hand bank looking downstream, that is. So there was 2 males, both believed to be Romanian, and they had been out a number of times and were witnessed by different individuals, and it was reported to myself. It had gone on social media a number of times. It had been reported through the 0800 80 70 60 number for our hotline number, and I'd missed them probably 3, maybe 4 times, and I think on the 4th time that we actually came across them, we missed them by a matter of minutes, actually on a joint patrol with the police, with Dave and the VBS. We were doing a litter pick through the sort of free stretch as part of the Anglers Against Litter, and it was all being publicised, and one of the chaps that actually filmed this on his phone He'd basically spooked them. He had on quite a set to with these guys, and he's only a little fella, but he's pretty fiery. And yeah, I've known him a few years in the job. One of the local anglers, like I say, very protective over his fishing. He's confronted him and he's filmed him. I'm sure a lot of you out there have probably seen it. It's probably still on YouTube or wherever it ended up being uploaded to. But yeah, it illustrates the people protecting their fish and reporting it to us. And basically, he's a lot of stuff was put on social media that I was sort of looking for him, and the police had done a lot of joint patrols with us through down the pipeline, through Mellings Wood. They'd seen us a lot in the police vehicles and my badge vehicle, and I think he's either gone to ground or he's disappeared of some form, or he's gone back to Romania, because from sort of June, July onwards, all the way through last year and this spring, no one's seen sight and sound of him. So yeah, we haven't got a financial penalty out of it, but the amount of things that went up on social media, I'm sure this guy will have seen it, because nearly half the people at Fisher Ribble saw it at the time. There was a lot of information out there about him.
Yeah, you're quite right. It was a good result. He's disappeared and he's got the message. Maybe we've just moved him onto another catchment. I don't know, but if he comes back to the fore again, there'll be a lot of people who recognise him.
Yeah, I don't think if he turns up on the Ribble again, I don't think it'll be long before we meet face to face.
No, I don't think it just highlights the power of social media, really, if it's used responsibly. I mean, the actual video is quite feisty, isn't it? There's a bit of swearing on it, so a bit of a caution if anyone wants to watch that. But it is a good result.
So yeah, but basically, we didn't actually say what he was doing. He was actually snatching salmon. So he was using a rod and line. Obviously, we've not confronted him, so we don't know if he's got a license or not. But he was using a rod and line, and he was actually using really large. He was actually going into the tackle shop at Angling Direct in Preston, and he was buying like massive, big sort of size 1C hooks, and he was using those to actually snag and snig like salmon up where the areas where you can see them lying up in the river. So he obviously knew where the fish were lying up, the spring salmon coming into the Ribble. What I actually did as a result of this, because I was so annoyed the fact that I'd missed him these few times, because he was on a bike, so he was in and out of there quick, out of the woods and up through the golf course. I actually went into the tackle shops in Preston. I have a really good working relationship, particularly with Angling Direct. And his picture was all on social media. They actually printed a picture off their own bikes at Preston at the AD shop, and he'd actually been into the shop a couple of weeks later trying to buy more tackle, and I'd actually asked the manager who I know quite well there to see if they'd actually ban him from the shop, and they were more than happy at working together with us on it, as were some of the other tackle shops. But he's actually been banned from Angling Direct, so it's minimising the sort of sources for him to be able to go out and buy the terminal tackle he needs to conduct what he was doing and trying to snatch salmon.
Really good result that, even though, as you said, it wasn't a financial penalty or a court appearance. It worked out. Final slide, you'll be pleased to hear, but poaching prevention advice, really. Some of this is obvious, but I think it's important to make it for your water, really. If you make sure that your water looks loved, tidy and cared for, you're far less likely to attract chancers, poachers. They'll see that as a risk. They see that it's looked after. Ensure you have good signage at appropriate locations. We provide signage. We provide it free. If you contact your local regional enforcement support manager, they can assist you with that. We're signed up to certain operations with the police and the EA, Leviathan and Traverse, up the west and the east side of the country. We have PDFs on our website. So if you need to contact your regional enforcement support managers, anglingtrust.net, go on to freshwater and then enforcement, and all the details are on there. Be in a position, as we've evidenced really, to communicate quickly both ways to your bailiff team and members any key information. You've seen how well and effective it can be, because they're your eyes and ears, and if everyone understands what the problem is, you're gonna spot it. Educate your members, share training with them, get them to attend future free training courses. because knowledge equals power. So, you know, forums like tonight, it's great if people come along to them. You need, this is really key for me, you need your bailiffs and your key members to build strong links with both the local EA fisheries enforcement officers, because they're out there doing the best. There's not enough of them, we know that, and your local neighbourhood policing teams or rural crime teams, because once you've established those links, it's a valuable asset to all. If you get a problem, yeah, you still report it through the normal channels, the 999, the 101, the 0800 to the EA, but you've also got follow-up contacts to do afterwards, and they will assist you and they'll focus on your problem, and those links are absolutely crucial, I would suggest. Use us to assist you. Attend your regional angling trust forums like you're doing tonight, thanks for that, and also fisheries enforcement workshops. All those details are on our website, anglingtrust.net. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's about it. Anything you'd like to add, Damien?
No, just like I say, keep reporting it and just be persistent with it. You know, don't be afraid to report it a number of times. If it, you know, like we said before, we can't always get out to every incident. We're not a blue light sort of response. And just to give you a quick picture, Cumbria and Lancashire, you're roughly looking at about 140, 150 miles north to south, and we have 7 officers that cover that area. So that's the whole of Cumbria, all over, or just to above the Scottish borders and down into Merseyside. 7 officers trying to cover that, doing not just fisheries enforcement but all the other array of fisheries things that we do. It is difficult to get to every job, so yeah, just be persistent, ring it in through the various sources, and you know, you've got the 0800 870 60 number, and report it to ourselves and Police of the Angling Trust. And thanks very much.
Yep, thanks for your time, Damien, really appreciate it, and thanks for everyone's time out there. We'll be around for any questions that you wish to ask us live shortly.